Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are super excited to be talking about how the California Student Aid Commission works with community partners to support formerly foster youth or students that have been in the foster youth system, and how we go ahead and actually go about providing them with different financial aid opportunities that they can benefit from. My name is Michael Lemus.
And I'm Judith Gutierrez.
And this is Financial Pay.
We're very excited today to be having the California Youth Connection joining us as we discuss, to Michael's point, the resources are available for former and current foster youth students here in the state of California. With us today, we have Jordan Souza, who's a statewide legislative manager at the California Youth Connection, or CYC for short, and Christina Parker, who is our policy liaison assistant at the California Youth Connection, or again, CYC for short. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. I think we can go ahead and start maybe with some introductions. Please introduce yourselves. Jordan, we'll go ahead and start with you just because I did introduce you first, and that way I don't want you all tripping over each other since we are still virtually. Bear with us, and those of you listening in, we hope to be back in the studio soon. But please go ahead and introduce yourselves, your role, and the work that your role entails. So let's go ahead and start with you, Jordan.
Absolutely. My name is Jordan. My pronouns are he, him, and I have the privilege to serve as the legislative manager for CYC. What it entails is I have the opportunity to work with the legislative and policy committee of our organization, which sets our statewide advocacy agenda for the membership.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Christina.
Yeah, my name is Christina Parker. My pronouns are Z, zers. I'm currently a full-time MSW student at the University of Michigan, and I'm also the policy liaison at CYC. And my job is to support with our policy tasks and with membership and so forth. And also have a digital platform where I provide conversations about different financial opportunities to about 12,000 listeners and viewers. So thank you for having me.
That is incredible. Yes, I think I've seen Christina on TikTok in a viral video that went out. So congratulations on that. And to both of you, just thank you so much for the work that you do at the California Youth Connection and just the work that you do with this student population. I think that's something Judith and I have definitely been talking about recently is how can we at the California Student Aid Commission at the state agency level really work more effectively with our community partners to really support specialized groups, right? It's not just about the general population. It's how do we work with specific student groups to really make sure that they feel supported, especially when it comes to financial aid, which can be really complex. So shout out to, everything that you all do. So with that being said, can you tell us a bit about the California Youth Connection, its mission, and the population that it serves? And why don't we start off with Christina this time?
Yeah. So California Youth Connection is a youth-led organization that supports young people between the ages of 14 to 24. And specifically those that are currently or formerly was in the foster care system or juvenile justice.
Awesome. And Jordan, anything else you would add?
Yeah, our vision of the organization is that any individual who's been impacted by the child welfare system will have the opportunity to be equal partners in contributing to all policies and decisions that impact their daily lives. Our vision is that all foster youth who've been impacted by California's foster care system will have their needs met and support and to grow into healthy and vibrant adults. The organization started in 1988 with current and former foster youth and volunteer supporters that really identified the critical need of youth voice within policy and legislation that was developed here in California. And how do we bring the youth voice into the table? We do this by providing different leadership skills and leadership opportunities and creating relationships where current and former foster youth could have direct access to the decision makers that implement child welfare policies. This could be from passing legislation to meeting directly with the Department of Social Services to training child welfare professionals that engage directly with foster youth.
Yeah, and I want to say after just reviewing, your website and working with you all here at CSAC, I really do appreciate it. I think it's powerful that just the mission overall of CYC is this shared partnership where the foster youth community can contribute to the policies and decisions that are made in their own lives, really. Here at CSAC, we are really always trying to just hear from the communities we serve. And we have been sort of expanding on how we work with the foster youth community, how we work with formerly incarcerated students, and just really learning about what that experience is like. So I highly value, that mission that CYC offers and the platform it provides these students. Unfortunately, the March 2nd deadline has passed for the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act applications. But we know that at CSAC, the Chafee grant, which is specifically for foster youth students, is still available year round, which is why we're very excited to be having this episode today. And while we may be able to talk about that soon, I won't get ahead of myself. I first want to go ahead and learn about what are the biggest issues in the foster youth community, specifically for foster youth in California, issues they experience, and especially those pursuing a post-secondary education, something for us to keep in mind. And then just a follow-up question to that, which I can bring up later, is how the pandemic has exacerbated any of these issues that have already been existing in this community. And either one of you can feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so one thing that I really appreciate from the organization that our members lead our work is saying nothing about us without us. So how are we integrating the individuals with lived experience into our agenda and what we're advocating for within the organization? I'd like to share that our statewide membership has faced challenges, motivation, education, and really a lot of work on how to dismantle institutions that have really put limitations to the success of foster youth. CYC has endured these battles even prior to the pandemic of how do we pursue a society that creates stability and strengthens every individual impacted by California's foster care system. I would like to share that with the pandemic, I think everyone got a little taste of what the experience that some individuals face when entering California's foster care system. COVID-19 really uprooted all our day-to-day lives with no notice, and really the average Californian got a inside look what the struggles that foster youth have been facing for many decades. Together we all faced the limitations of not accessing our family members who were living outside our homes. Together we were all having to wait patiently on state guidance on being released of how do we access and navigate our day-to-day lives. And together we all worried that what the future was going to look like in regards to our housing, financial stability, and job security. And though some individuals experienced that with the pandemic, this has been the reality for every day for many current and former foster youth. Although these struggles were not new within the foster care community, they were exacerbated by the pandemic. On one hand, we knew that more than ever we needed to elevate the youth voice, but at the same time, we know there was going to be a lot of disconnect to meet and elevate the voice and really ensure the safety and well-being of all foster youth here in California. CYC members in the beginning of the pandemic launched a COVID-19 survey, and we received the responses of a total of 141 current and former foster youth who have spent time within California's child welfare system. In our findings, what members identified were three areas that foster youth were facing and were struggling with the impact of COVID-19, which included housing, school stability, and unmet health needs. Although this information was so essential to really develop the platform for CYC members to advocate, we knew it was very limited because of how many respondents we got and the total of youth that are in California foster care system, which is roughly around 60,000 youth in California's foster care system.
Yeah, and I just want to add on that. A couple years back, we did the uh, stability campaign, and we had four pillars. Health and wellness, education, and so forth. And when COVID-19, became this thing, right, that shut down schools, and the kids had to go somewhere else to their parents. But if you're a young person that's in a foster care system, where do you go? You know, people were having to, right, lean on people to support them financially. But when you don't have anyone to lean on, how do you how do you support yourself financially? And so the pandemic only exacerbated the things that were currently plaguing these communities, and those that were most impacted or increasingly impacted were those that were in schools, right? Who now had to face homelessness because they could not live on campus because schools shut down. Those that already struggled with food insecurity, trying to navigate, these system changes to provide them with meals and so forth so forth. And so, really listening to our membership and having that survey and seeing how impactful not only was for those that are currently in higher education, but even those that thought about going into higher education. How do you now be able to, your environment changing, right? And having to do classes online, like how do you pay attention? How do you meet those A through G requirements? Like how do you navigate all this in a new world where a lot of times going to school was your outlet?
As I started, and I will say it again, thank you both for all the work that you do. Because wow, I mean, we've definitely talked about this a lot, how the pandemic really exacerbated things because these issues, they already existed, even when it comes to financial aid and of course, equity involved with financial aid and access, a lot of these issues existed and COVID-19 really, I mean, for a lot of folks, flip things upside down. We're like, hey, these are the things that have existed below the surface this whole time where people are experiencing this in their day to day, but the rest of society may not know that. And I think COVID-19 definitely played a role in just helping people to really understand the lived realities of a lot of people and what they go through on a regular basis and why it's so important for organizations like yours and like CSAC to be able to provide, access to these different opportunities. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because wow, I mean, that's really incredible work. You've already kind of touched on this, but I definitely want to open it up. So are there specific resources or general resources that each of you would want to go ahead and highlight when it comes to, your population and making sure that you both mentioned like having those voices be heard. I really appreciate that and just bringing them to the table instead of just making decisions or assuming that this is what people need. So when it comes to resources, are there any that either of you would want to highlight?
What I appreciate with CYC that it provides the leadership opportunities for young people to get involved. One I wanted to share that any current and former system impacted youth between the ages of 14 to 24 is welcome to be a CYC member. And how CYC defines a system impacted youth is that someone who has lived experience in out-of-home care placement, out-of-home care. This could be from a foster home, group home, living in a transitional housing program. This could also include living with a relative, kinship care, as well as any placement through probation or the juvenile justice system. A formally system impacted youth could be anyone who has spent any time in the system. This could be emancipation from foster care, have been reunified with their family, or were adopted. I would say the best way to get involved is to get involved with the local CYC chapter. California Youth Connection has a website where you could find a community advocacy coordinator in your region to get connected of what chapter. And if there is not a chapter available, not to worry. Being a youth-led organization, it is the youth who make the chapter. So as long as there's two or more individuals who are passionate in transforming the child welfare system, CYC will provide the resources to make that happen. One thing I do appreciate that we are an advocacy organization, so we don't provide direct services. However, CYC has been a platform for young leaders to come together and get access to those direct services. Myself, being a former member of the organization, I got connected through California Youth Connection through Cal State Fullerton Guardian Scholars Program. And through the Guardian Scholars Program, it was really the opportunity to find a sense of belonging in a community where I was able to meet individuals who had similar experiences that I went through and faced the same trials and tribulations from housing security, financial security, as well as the trials and tribulations that facing from being part of the foster care system. With COVID-19, I have even witnessed CYC members getting connected to organizations like ifoster.org, who were able to get technology support when everything was moving to distance learning, to accessing Chafee cash cards that were distributed by the California Department of Social Services. This was a service that wasn't marketed everywhere. Not every social worker or probation officer was aware of this resource. However, CYC was very critical to make sure to hold the Department of Social Services accountable that these funds were being disseminated and going directly to young people. So we were doing a lot of campaigns, a lot of awareness of this resource, as well as connecting with other organizations that are very unique on providing services, whether it's legal aid services through the Youth Law Center or the Children's Law Center of California, how to be aware of the Foster Youth Bill of Rights and contacting the Foster Care Ombuds Office, to even getting tax support. I want to give a shout out to John Byrne Advocates for Youth, who has been a huge partner and ally to support youth when are facing financial hardships and have to kind of navigate the IRS and tax system when they are doing their taxes, and being informed of great resources like the Golden Stimulus and the Cal EITC tax credit that many current and former foster youth are eligible to receive.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I think one of the great things about California Youth Connection, especially for students to get involved, is that it develops those skills. With CYC, in my member role, it was the first time that I really got to advocate. First time I got to learn about the legislative system, and it's a lot of first for many students out there. You get to develop these different skills. You get to learn about how to push a bill. You get to learn how to train, and you get to learn like how impactful your story is. How do you use your story in order to move change forward, right? And so I think not only are you able to get connected to those different resources and different opportunities, but you're also going to be able to develop yourself and really just have a sense of community.
Yeah. Well, thank you for providing that insight and for sharing your stories, really. That was really, really insightful. Uh, on that note of just providing resources for the foster youth community and overall, aid, at least speaking for CSAC, I did want to circle back on that point of the Chafee grant application that is available year round. At the California Student Aid Commission, we offer what is called the Chafee grant, which is actually funded at both the federal and state levels. And it's a separate application for the foster youth community, which actually provides up to $5,000 annually for these students. So just to kind of give some background too, and Michael, feel free to chime in. We usually encourage, or we always encourage students to complete either the FAFSA, or also known as the free application for federal student aid, but FAFSA for short, or the California Dream Act application, or CADA for short, if they're undocumented students. Students usually ask us, like, how do I apply for the Cal Grant? I did my FAFSA. Should I then apply for a Cal Grant? And we're constantly reminding folks, like, no, you have the two applications, the two main applications, FAFSA or the California Dream Act application for undocumented students. You complete those every year while you're studying and as you're going into college. And then there's a Chafee grant application for foster youth, which you complete once, right? And that is what gets you that extra funding on top of any potential financial aid you might have been eligible for already. But I'll go ahead and hand it to Michael in case I missed anything, but definitely wanted to remind our listeners that these resources exist and you can definitely stack them.
Yeah, no, I think Judith, you did a wonderful job of just summarizing the resource itself. I think the only thing I would add is just to your point of stacking resources. Chafee is in addition to what a student can qualify in terms of financial aid via the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. And in fact, we're in a state like California where there is quite a bit of funding for these students. And I think that's really important for us to highlight, is the fact that the resources exist. Sometimes the issue is, and that's a big reason why we have a podcast like this, is getting the information out to students and making sure that they're aware. Because unfortunately, I think we probably all have heard of this, is that sometimes funding gets left on the table because people just weren't aware. And so for us, it's coming up with creative ways and touching base with our community partners to make sure that people are aware, but really that these students are actually aware of the resources that they have access to. Because sometimes, I've even heard of students like halfway through their college career finding out about things that they could have qualified and actually applied to, before they actually entered a post-secondary institution. So that is one of the many resources that we have. But of course, we want to continue to highlight the Chafee Grant for Foster Youth because it really can provide a lot. And that funding actually can be used beyond just tuition. There's a different forms of just aid that are possible within that actual grant that can be used to support the student in a variety of different needs. So with that being said, related to that, how can we at CSAC further support and how can we support those listening within the community? As a state agency, as a California Student Aid Commission, we are the largest statewide student financial aid administrator in the country, providing this aid. But of course, it's really important for us to check in with groups like you all, the community, to really see like, hey, what do you think? How can CSAC further support this community? So why don't we start off with Jordan this time, and then we'll pass it on over to Christina.
Yeah, thank you. I would say definitely if there is one advice or recommendation shared, it's just how are you integrating individuals with lived experience into the dissemination process, whether it's educating about these resources or developing the policies. I was one of those college students that found out halfway through a college career, like, oh, there's the Chafee grant. And I do want to give a shout out to all the advocates who were able to streamline that process. Just remember from my personal experience of just that there was a criteria and being told like, oh, you missed that deadline or you won't be in the priority. So it was really kind of starting from scratch of finding these resources. When integrating individuals with lived experience, I think that is the true expertise of, how are we meeting individuals where they're at, and what barriers they may face. Although I do have lived experience in entering California's foster care system, I could not imagine what is the experience of currently right now with the impact of the pandemic. And so I think that's one thing I really appreciate with CYC is like, it's not that you have to have a degree or have the certificate, but that individuals who are closest to the problem are the ones who will be closest to the solution.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better, not at all. It is essential, it is crucial in order to have young people or people who have that lived experience to be the ones to be like, hey, these are things that we need. These are the problems with FAFSA. These are the problems with why we aren't applying for these grants and so forth. This is how we need better communication. And even in, some of the digital work that I've been doing, right? I've seen a huge need of thousands of students who are like, how do I apply for this? Where do I find this at? Like, why didn't anyone tell me this? Like, why aren't people communicating with me outside of using emails, outside of having long, wordy pages on their websites, right? That students don't even want to read half or don't even understand what they're reading. And a lot of times these problems can all be solved by asking the question to those that are part of that population. And it is so important to have diversity even in the demographics and the groups that we are talking to, right? Because my experience going through college is totally different than someone else's experience who immigrated here or so forth. And so I love what y'all are doing, and I think that it's important to have these conversations, especially with those individuals that are closer to the problem.
Christina, I'm so glad you make that point too, because it's a perfect segue to the next question we had for you. It's how can we make these resources known for these populations? What is the best way to meet them halfway, essentially? We recently did a marketing campaign with the Department of Social Services where we thought we have a non-traditional population here, so we need non-traditional communications platforms, ways of communicating with them so that we can share that these resources exist. And, we've seen the radio ads, or we've heard the radio ads, we've seen the long emails. As a state agency, we are definitely well aware of how our websites can definitely use a Facetune sometimes, just so that it's easier to navigate and understand, which is something we're working on at CSAC as we speak. But we had to really come together with CDSS and our team at CSAC and think, what can we do differently? And we found that social media plays a big role in just how youth in general is receiving its information. We did a lot of paid social media advertisements on the different social media platforms here at CSAC. And we also started to do streaming services where we had these short audio only ads on streaming services like Spotify, Pandora, you name it. And we actually found that a lot of students get their information from a phone and they actually listen through the audio ads, and they actually click on the links for more information. And so we were really excited to see that it was working. We did see an increase in some applications or application rates, but we want to find ways of continuing to do that work and expanding on it. So what recommendations or advice would you have for agencies or organizations like us who just want to share the information and hope that it reaches the students?
Yeah, I think that you all are doing a great job in stepping towards that, right? Utilizing other social medias, right? Twitter, um, putting ads on Spotify, TikTok, right? All these different platforms that students are going to in order to get information, right? TikTok is one of the fastest growing social media platforms, and that platform has shifted to be where people get bite sized information. Um, in order for them to click further or have whatever the case may be. But as soon as I got accepted at my university, the first question I had was like, how am I going to pay for this? I had so many different questions, and I was like, if I'm having this question, I'm pretty sure there's so many other students that out there that also have this question. And I remember I put out a video about the higher education emergency relief funding, which is federal funding. Half has to go to students, and a million students seen it, right? And all of a sudden, my emails started popping and all this stuff, and people were like, "Why didn't I know about this?" And I have to sit there with students and be like, "You have to check your emails. You have to, And they're like, "Why are they sending me this email?" And like when I got 50 other emails and so forth. And so I think it really is about utilizing social media and also thinking about who is in the front of that. Um, Young people who are impacted by systems, right? Having them be the creative developers of that content, because sometimes we may think we're doing it, but we're not, right? It might need a fresh face that really can relate to the demographics that you're trying to reach. In addition to that, right, condensing information. Like, how can we say this in 4 sentences? Like, how can we create content? Just like you were saying, like shorting down some of your videos. Like, how can we do more of that? How do we develop content that is in different languages, in sign language, right? How do we expand our reach? Because sometimes it's not even about reducing the subject matter. It's not even about being on multiple different platforms when you are talking in a language that everyone can't receive the information in. And so I think that's like one of the biggest things. And in addition to that, also, right, I think that we overlook our disabled community, those that, may not be able to read, the may have intellectual abilities or so forth. And so, like, how are we having content delivered? Like, do we have multiple different platforms for how to do the FAFSA? One that is, thinking about other groups, right? And so forth. And so that's what I think I would add to that.
And if I could share, just in California, in order to be eligible for extended foster care, individuals either have to go to school full time or work part time. While there are individuals who have a passion to pursue higher education, there are individuals that it is a means of survival to pursue and go to college in order to be eligible to receive services in extended foster care. If I could add, just like me, kind of where are the hotspots of individuals who have lived experience or meeting? I know we mentioned CYC chapter meetings, but also like where are the independent living program workshops happening in each 58 counties? Where are the programs that are serving current and former foster youth that could be eligible, or if they're not, if they are thinking of pursuing higher education, that they get that heads up that, hey, you could qualify for this, as well as meeting individuals who are rarely restricted in those opportunities, whether it's in a congregate care setting or a group home, to even in the juvenile halls or probation group homes, where individuals that even though they are not technically placed in a licensed California foster care placement, that they would be eligible to receive these services once they are pursuing higher education.
Wow, and I just learned tons just in those last couple of minutes, and I think the 2 things or the 2 words that are really speaking out to me is just access and inclusion. So it's like there's the access level of like how we actually create content, how we go about, releasing information, and of course, like condensing it, finding better ways to really reach these students, especially when they do get tons of emails. Like we hear that time and time again, especially these days, with COVID and just the pandemic. Students are like, what other ways can you reach out to me? Because I get tons of emails every day. So we understand. But I think the other piece is also the inclusion piece is how do we reach out to specialized populations? How do we consider disabilities? How do we consider different learning styles? All that needs to be considered when it comes to just disseminating any sort of information. And, that is something that we definitely have been thinking of, just like making sure that, we reach different people and in different ways, because not everyone receives, their information in the same way. And I like, Judith, I know you mentioned this, but it's like not going about it in a cookie cutter way. I really like that phrase because it's not just the same thing for everyone. And it really is just being intentional. And sometimes it takes extra time, but I think that extra time really is worth it, and it goes so much farther. And I think a lot of people, especially that are oftentimes forgotten, would really appreciate that. So thank you both for just honing in on that. So our last question here is if there's any advice that you would give to students and families listening in. So as you know, the California Student Aid Commission supports with financial aid, but we have all sorts of people listening in from all sorts of different cities across California. So if there's any parting words or advice that you'd love to give to our students and families listening in, it would be great to go ahead and share those. So we'll start off with Christina this time.
Yeah, my advice to those that were in the foster care system or currently are in the foster care system is knowing that you can do anything that you put your mind to, And sometimes it's unfortunate that we have to, put our foot in the door and cram it open in order for other people to follow. But sometimes that's just what we have to do. And leaning on organizations and resources that are out there to support you through that journey is going to be essential for you getting to whatever level of education that you want or don't want, right? Because regardless of if you want to go to college or if you don't want to go to college, know that that is your choice. And if you do want to go to college, know that there's so many resources out there that are available to you to make sure that that can happen.
And Jordan, we'll pass it on to you if there's any other words you want to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime I'm leaving, I try to end with a quote. And one of the quotes I always look up to from a former foster youth, Malcolm X, and a quote he shared is, "Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody could give you equality or justice or anything. You have to take it." And what I encourage every current former foster youth is to take those opportunities, whether it's in or outside of higher education, and to really go forward to your dreams. I think there's a lot of pressure when having lived experience in system to really do what is best to survive or to assimilate, to make sure that you're not ruffling feathers or not shaking the system. If you have dreams of pursuing things that are not convenient, whether your probation officer, your social worker, if it was like, oh, you can't study abroad because you will lose your housing, or man, you should probably focus in that major because you'll find more job security. I would say take the opportunities you want, and that if you're interested in finding a community support, to let you know that CYC does have your back and will always be dedicated to going towards a society that will honor and nourish every individual impacted by the foster care system.
Thank you both so much for that advice. It truly is a privilege to be working with you all at CYC and the work you do, and just continue to inform us and how we can best support this community as well, and let us know how we can continue to support and empower the work you do and empower these students. So with that, thank you so much for being here today, for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
All righty, awesome. So that was really insightful. I I'm definitely excited to continue on with the work we're doing. It's definitely been a crazy time. I think it's all hands on deck when that March 2nd deadline is on its way. And now that we've passed it, I think we have to really put our energy in reminding students that there are still resources available. And we at CSAC have your back year round. So feel free to check us out if you just need more information or any further support. But maybe let's go ahead and get into our awesome segment of this financial paid podcast, which is our Mythbuster. And Michael, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go into our Mythbuster segment. So the Mythbuster that we want to go ahead and address today is, does CSAC assist with student loans? And that includes, taking payments. Do they have information about them? That's something that we hear time and time again. And Judith, we talked on this, probably already touched on it in previous episodes, but there's confusion out there. A lot of students think, okay, are you only providing loans, or is this the only form of aid available? Or sometimes people just go in with the assumption that, that's it. That's all they're going to qualify for. When in reality, they can actually qualify for other forms of aid too. But the question is, does CSAC assist with student loans? And isn't financial aid just another word for loans for school? So I'll pass it on over to Judith.
That is a great question, and we're so glad it was brought up. And the answer is the commission is actually the principal state agency responsible for administering the Cal Grant programs. These are grants, not loans. And we do not offer any sort of administer loans. And I also wanted to kind of piggyback off of that too, Michael, that myth of, do you provide loans? Is financial aid just another word for loans? And we also kind of see the flip side of that is we can't go around saying free money either, because then CSAC may come off as a scam as well. And so we're always trying to find that balance of, no, these are federal and state loans. There's even institutional aid if you're eligible. So it really just comes down to applying for the FAFSA, applying for the California Dream Act application if you're an undocumented student, and really seeing what you're eligible for. You lose nothing by just taking a chance and finding out what grants, not loans, are available for you.
I love that. It's seeing what you're eligible for, because a lot of people, again, go in with the assumption, sometimes there's misinformation out there, so we also understand, but go in with the assumption that they're not going to qualify for anything, and then are pleasantly surprised that they actually qualify not only for something, but for a lot more than they actually thought they could ever qualify for. And so there is a lot of opportunity out there. And I think when it comes to the loan conversation, that is a form of financial aid. But when it comes to what CSAC administers, again, Cal Grant and other forms of grants that we administer, it is important to differentiate just what the different forms of financial aid are available and how students can access them. So thank you. And thank you, of course, my co-host Judith, for another wonderful episode of Financial Paid. We are so excited that people are tuning in and just listening to all of our wonderful guests and everything that we have to say here. So I just want to go ahead and say a big thank you to those listening in.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great one and see you again soon.
See you later. Bye.
Bye now.